Walter Pruitt looked me dead in the eye across that conference table and said, "This company runs on family blood, Hank." The room went completely still. Not the quiet you get when someone says something polite. The quiet you get when something breaks and everybody in the room already knows it, and nobody wants to be the first one to look at the pieces. There were 11 people at that table. Site supervisors I'd hired, project managers I'd trained from scratch, senior account reps who'd been with me for over a decade. Outside the window, I could hear a concrete truck idling in the lot, one of our crews gearing up for a morning pour. Inside, nobody moved. Nobody looked up. They all found something very important to study on the surface of that table. That was the moment. A Tuesday morning in March. A conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and drywall dust. My name is Hank Ridley. I'm 54 years old. And for 19 years, I co-founded and built Ridley and Pruitt Construction Group out of Dayton, Ohio. I met Walter Pruitt at a contractors expo in Cincinnati when I was 34. He had seed money and a name people in commercial real estate already recognized. I had 8 years of actual field experience, project management, site coordination, subcontractor negotiations, the kind of work where you're on the ground at 5:45 a.m. and still reviewing permit applications after dinner. Walter had the capital. I had the operational knowledge. We shook hands over bad coffee and incorporated Ridley and Pruitt Construction Group the following spring. The early years were lean. 3 crews, a rented office on the west side of Dayton, and a truck I used for site visits that had over 190,000 miles on it. I built the estimating system from scratch on my personal laptop, nights, weekends, lunch breaks. Taught myself the software using online tutorials because we couldn't afford to bring in someone who already knew it. Walter handled investor dinners and client relationships on the capital side. I handled everything that kept the actual jobs running. By year 6, we had city contracts. By year 11, we were competitive on county infrastructure bids. By year 15, we held 3 active municipal contracts with a combined annual value of $6.8 million, including a public works contract with the city of Dayton that I had negotiated personally, clause by clause over 4 months of back and forth with the procurement office. Walter gave me the director of operations title around year 8. No equity agreement, no formal partnership terms beyond the original incorporation papers. Just a title and a salary of $98,000 that hadn't moved in 3 years, even as the company had nearly doubled in revenue. Here's what nobody tells you about building something inside someone else's name. You convince yourself the work is enough. You tell yourself loyalty compounds over time, that people who watch you pour the foundation will eventually acknowledge who mixed the concrete. Then Walter's son Nolan graduated with his MBA. Nolan Pruitt was 30 years old, wore clothes that cost more than my first truck, and had exactly 0 days of field experience. What he had was Walter's last name and 4 years of business school theory that had never been tested against a real job site, in real weather, with a real subcontractor calling at 7 a.m. to say his crew isn't showing up. He came into the company talking about operational restructuring and stakeholder alignment frameworks. Meanwhile, he couldn't read a bid sheet, couldn't price a concrete pour, couldn't explain why you don't schedule exterior framing in February in Ohio. I trained him anyway. For 8 months, I walked Nolan through every system I'd built, every municipal relationship I'd developed, every subcontractor deal I'd structured over nearly 2 decades. He took notes and nodded and used the word synergy in ways that made my site supervisors stare at the ceiling tiles. I told myself Walter was easing him in gradually, that there'd be a real conversation at some point about structure, about what the future looked like for both of us. There was a conversation, just not the one I expected. Walter called the annual operations meeting on that Tuesday in March. I sat down at the table expecting a standard quarterly review. Instead, Walter stood up, thanked the team for a strong year, and announced that effective immediately, Nolan would be assuming the role of Chief Operating Officer and taking full operational control of Ridley and Pruitt Construction Group. No phone call the night before, no hallway conversation, not even a look across the parking lot that morning. I looked at Walter. He held my eyes for exactly 1 second, then turned toward the window. I asked, as evenly as I could manage, what my role would be going forward. That's when he said it. This company runs on family blood. Hank always has, always will. 11 people in that room, a concrete truck still idling outside, and every single person at that table found something suddenly very important to look at on the floor. I sat through the rest of that meeting. 40 minutes. Smiled when it was appropriate, shook Nolan's hand at the end, walked back to my office and closed the door behind me. On my desk was the leather notebook I'd kept since year one, dark cover worn soft at the edges from years of handling inside. Every municipal contact I'd cultivated, every vendor deal I'd built, procurement officers' direct lines and communication preferences, contract renewal cycles, project timelines. 19 years of institutional knowledge, none of it on a company server. None of it backed up anywhere Walter or Nolan could access. I picked it up and just sat there for a while. That evening, Donna was in the kitchen when I got home. She didn't ask what happened right away. She looked at me once, set down what she was doing, and said, "Sit down." She put a plate in front of me and sat across the table and waited. I told her about the meeting. The announcement, Walter's exact words. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she said, "Walter put his name on the sign. You built what's behind it." She said it quietly, like she'd been holding it for a while and had finally decided to set it down between us. I told her I needed a few days to think. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already started thinking the moment I walked out of that conference room. I took 3 days, told the office I was working from home, which I was just not on Ridley and Prue at work. I sat at the kitchen table with the notebook open and went through it page by page, not out of nostalgia, out of calculation. On the first day, I went through every municipal contact, every contract renewal date, every procurement officer I dealt with over the years. On the second day, I started pulling up actual documents on my personal laptop, copies I'd kept for my own reference going back to year 3. Here's what I found. All 3 active municipal contracts listed me by name as the designated project lead. Not Ridley and Prue Construction Group in general. Me specifically, Hank Ridley, with my direct phone number written into the performance clause. 2 of those contracts contained language I had written myself during negotiations, requiring continuity of the designated operational contact as a condition of performance compliance. I'd written those clauses to protect the company's client relationships. Turns out I'd been protecting something else entirely. Then I looked at the estimating software, the system I'd built on my personal laptop on my own time, back in years 1 and 2 before the company had any real IT infrastructure worth mentioning. I'd updated it every year since. It had sharpened our bid accuracy on every municipal contract we'd won and reduced our margin errors on subcontractor pricing by a number that would have made Walter's eyes water if he'd ever actually understood what he was looking at. There was no IP assignment clause in my original employment agreement. Walter's attorney at the time was a general practice guy in Dayton who mostly did real estate closings. That software had never been formally transferred to the company. On the 3rd day, I found the founding email chain. Walter and me, back and forth in the first 2 weeks before we incorporated. 2 people talking through a business they were building together. Equal footing, equal input. The language was plain, our company, our approach, what we both bring to this, and then the original business license filed under both names, both signatures. Ridley and Prue, right there in black ink. I closed the laptop and sat with my cold coffee for a long time. I want to be straight about what happened next, because it's easy to make it sound more dramatic than it actually felt in the moment. What I mostly felt was tired. Not angry, tired. Tired in the specific way you get when you've been patient for a very long time, and you finally stop wondering if the other person is going to come around. I'd spent 19 years treating this company like it was mine, because in every functional sense it was. The jobs ran because of systems I built. The contracts existed because of relationships I developed. The bids won because of a software tool that lived on my personal hard drive and had never belonged to anyone but me. I'd acted in good faith every single day. Shared everything I built without ever asking for protection in return because it never crossed my mind that I'd need it. That wasn't stupidity. That was trust. And trust, I was learning, is only worth what the other person decides it's worth. The following Monday morning, a FedEx envelope arrived from Walter's attorney. Inside, a non-compete agreement and an NDA, both requiring my signature before any departure. The non-compete covered a 5-state region and a 2-year window. It would have made it effectively impossible for me to work in commercial construction anywhere in the Midwest. I drove to see my own attorney that afternoon. Brought everything. The founding emails, the original business license, the contract documents with my name and the performance clauses, and a written summary of the estimating software situation and how it had been developed. She read through all of it, set it down, looked up, They sent you a non-compete, she said. You have a co-founder claim an unassigned IP. We didn't need to say much else. Walter's attorney withdrew the non-compete in 4 days. No explanation, no phone call. The letter just didn't exist anymore. I never brought it up with Walter directly, never needed to. Around that same time, I drove past the office on a Wednesday afternoon. Not on purpose, I was coming back from a supplier meeting on the west side and it was on the route. I almost didn't look, but I did. The sign above the entrance had been changed. Pruitt Construction Group, no ampersand, no Ridley. Just Pruitt in the same clean lettering, like the other name had never been there at all. I pulled into a gas station 2 blocks down and sat in the truck for a few minutes. Not because I was falling apart, I just needed a minute to let it land. 19 years, and he hadn't even waited until I was gone. I thought about Pete Holloway, CEO of Iron Gate Builders out of Cleveland. We'd crossed paths at contractor events a handful of times over the years, the kind of guy who asked technical questions and actually listened to the answers. He'd reached out to me twice in the past 3 years. No pressure, no hard sell, just a standing offer. His last message, maybe 5 months back, offer still open? Hank, we value people who've actually built things. I'd ignored it both times, out of loyalty, out of the belief that if you build something long enough and well enough, eventually the people who benefit from it will acknowledge what it took. I called him from the gas station parking lot. I was starting to think you were never actually going to call, he said. He sounded genuinely pleased. Not smug about it, just glad. We set up a meeting for the following week. We met at a place outside Cleveland on a Thursday afternoon. Nothing fancy, a diner off I-71 that Pete had mentioned a couple times over the years. No power lunch atmosphere, no one trying to impress anyone. Just a corner booth, decent food, and a straight conversation. Pete Holloway was in his late 50s, built like someone who'd swung a hammer before he'd learned to read a balance sheet. He had the kind of quiet confidence you only get from having actually been wrong on a job site and figuring out how to fix it. When he shook my hand, he looked me in the eye and didn't rush it. He asked about our municipal bid process first, specifically how we handled the estimating cycle on public works contracts with 90-day windows. Then he asked about subcontractor margin structures in the Dayton market. Then he asked about how we tracked material cost variance across multi-phase projects. He didn't need me to explain what any of those terms meant. That alone told me something. After about 20 minutes of that, he set down his coffee and said, "You built the operation over there, didn't you? Not just managed it. Actually built it." I told him yes. He nodded like he'd already known and just wanted to hear me say it. That's what I figured from the outside. The bid numbers Ridley and Pruitt posted on the Greene County package last year, that wasn't a company working from standard templates. Someone who understood the actual cost structure put that together. I told him about the estimating software, how I'd built it, when, on what equipment, under what circumstances. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "If the IP is yours, we have a formal acquisition process. Independent valuation, clean documentation, your name on the filing. We've done it twice before with people who came in carrying tools they built on their own time." Then he laid out the offer, $145,000 base salary, 6% profit sharing tied to regional performance, SVP of operations over 3 offices, Cleveland, Akron, and a newer hub in Columbus. A team where the average tenure was over 11 years. Then he said the thing I hadn't heard in 19 years at Ridley and Pruitt. Your name goes on every contract you run, every bid package, every municipal filing, every performance report. You're not support staff for someone else's relationship. You're the relationship. I drove back to Dayton that evening thinking about the estimating software sitting on my personal hard drive, thinking about those 3 municipal contracts with my name in the performance clause, thinking about the founding email chain and the business license with both signatures. Donna was still up when I got home. We sat at the kitchen table. I walked her through the offer. She listened to all of it. Then she said, "So take it." No hesitation. No long discussion, just that. I called Pete the next morning, told him I was in. We agreed on a start date 3 weeks out. That afternoon I typed up my resignation letter, 2 weeks notice. Clean, professional, nothing extra. Printed it on plain paper, not company letterhead. That felt right. Before I walked it down to Walter's office, I opened my laptop and drafted 3 emails. One to Judith Crane at the City of Dayton Procurement Office, 2 others at the county level, people I'd worked with directly for the better part of a decade. The emails were formal and to the point. I informed each of them that I'd be transitioning out of my role at Ridley and Pruitt, that I could be reached going forward through Erringate Builders in Cleveland, and included Pete's contact information along with my new title. I wasn't bad-mouthing anyone. I wasn't burning anything down. I was the designated project lead on their contracts. Notifying them of a status change wasn't just something I was entitled to do. In 2 of the 3 contracts, it was my obligation under the performance clause. I was doing exactly what the contract required. I sent all 3 emails. Then I walked the resignation letter down the hall. Walter was on a call when I knocked. He held up one finger without looking at me, finished his conversation, then leaned back in his chair, the way he always did when he was about to say something he'd already decided. I set the letter on his desk. He read it in about 10 seconds. 2 weeks, he said. Not a question. 2 weeks, I said. He asked where I was going. I told him Irongate. His expression shifted, not anger exactly, more like someone who just stepped outside and realized the weather had changed while they weren't paying attention. He asked if we could talk about a different structure, maybe a shared arrangement with Nolan, something that kept my operational knowledge inside the company. I told him about the Irongate offer. He said they were overpaying. I told him that was between me and them. Then he said, I built this company from the ground up, Hank. I looked at him for a moment. You brought the capital and the name, Walter. I built the company. We've both known that for a long time. I walked out before he could answer. The next 2 weeks were the kind of strange that only happens when something is ending and nobody wants to say it out loud. People who'd barely acknowledged me in the hallway for years suddenly wanted to grab lunch. Conversations that should have happened in year 10 were happening in the break room in week 1 of my notice period. Darnell Faust, my site supervisor of 10 years, stopped by my office on the second day. He stood in the doorway for a moment, didn't say much, just nodded slowly and said, "Gonna be different around here?" Then he left. We both knew what my leaving actually meant for the people doing the real work. Nolan followed me around with a legal pad most of that first week. He had questions about everything: municipal contract renewal timelines, how we handled change order disputes with the city, why we used certain concrete specs on county road work, how the subcontractor vetting process worked on public bids. I answered every question, completely and patiently. If I was going to leave, I was going to leave clean. One afternoon he stopped me in the hallway and asked why we always built a 12% contingency buffer into public works estimates instead of the standard 8%. I explained it to him. Told him about 2 jobs in year 7 where 8% had left us exposed when material costs shifted mid-project. Told him the 12% wasn't padding. It was the number that kept us from losing money on jobs we'd already won. He wrote it down and nodded. What I didn't tell him was that the estimating software that calculated those buffers automatically, the one that had been running every bid we'd submitted for 17 years, lived on my personal hard drive and was coming with me. Nobody asked about it directly, which told me Nolan still didn't fully understand what it was or that it existed as a standalone tool. To him, the bids just came out accurate. He didn't know there was a specific system behind it, built on personal equipment, never transferred, never documented as company property. I wasn't going to volunteer that information. On my last Friday, I cleaned out my desk at 5 in the afternoon. The notebook went into my bag first. Then a photo from the previous Thanksgiving, Donna and Miles on the back porch. Miles in a Buckeyes hoodie, grinning the way 20-year-olds grin when they don't realize you're taking the picture. Walter had mentioned at a family dinner 2 years back that he'd help with Miles's college costs when the time came. Mentioned it casually, the way he mentioned a lot of things, over a meal, with no follow-through, no paperwork, nothing written down. When Miles started his sophomore year in mechanical engineering that fall, we hadn't heard a word about it. Not from Walter. Not from anyone. We were covering it ourselves. It was tight, but every dollar of it was clean and it was ours. I put the photo in my bag. Took one last look out the window at the equipment yard. Cranes, excavators, flatbeds lined up in the early evening light. Every project decision behind every one of those machines built on systems I'd created, processes I'd developed, relationships I'd spent nearly 2 decades building from scratch. I walked out at 5:15 on a Friday and didn't look back. My first week at Irongate felt like stepping into a building where the pressure was different. Not better or worse right away, just different in a way I hadn't expected. Nobody copied Walter on internal emails. Nobody seized anyone upstairs to keep them informed of what I was doing. When I walked into a meeting and said something, people wrote it down and then actually did it. I had a real office, door, nameplate, window facing the yard. Small things, but after 19 years of a corner desk in an open floor plan, I noticed every one of them. Pete didn't hover. He checked in once a day, asked one question, and left me to work. I spent the first 2 weeks doing what I always do. When I come into an operation I don't fully know yet, listening before talking, mapping before moving. Rode along on site visits for 3 active jobs, sat with the estimating team for a full day and watched how they built bid packages from the ground up. Found 3 pricing gaps in the subcontractor vetting process that nobody had flagged because nobody had been looking at the right data. In week 3, we started the formal process of integrating the estimating software into Irongate's systems. Pete's team ran it exactly the way he described at the diner. Independent valuation, clean documentation, my name on the IP filing. It wasn't a life-changing number. That wasn't the point. The point was that for the first time in 19 years, something I had built was legally, documentably, unambiguously mine. And then mine to transfer on my own terms to someone who understood what it was actually worth. Within 2 quarters, bid accuracy on Irongate's municipal work had improved enough that Pete included the performance numbers in our next county proposal package. Margin error rates dropped. Win rate on competitive public bids went up. Both Irongate and Prute Construction submitted bids on a public infrastructure package covering road and drainage work across Montgomery and Greene counties. Combined contract value, $9.2 million over 3 years. The same counties where I'd spent the better part of a decade building relationships with the procurement office. I built the best bid I could using Irongate's actual capabilities. I didn't use anything from Prute's internal cost structures. Didn't need to. Irongate's systems were running better now, more accurate, faster turnaround, cleaner subcontractor documentation. And the procurement officers on the other side of that bid evaluation already knew where I'd gone. They'd known for months. Irongate won the contract. About a week after the award was posted publicly, my phone rang. Dayton area code I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was Nolan. He left a message that ran just under 3 minutes. The short version, Prute Construction was having trouble with 2 municipal account renewals. Some of the contacts weren't responding the way he expected. He was wondering if I'd be willing to help informally, just a couple of calls, nothing official, smooth things over quietly. He said Walter didn't know he was calling. I listened to it twice. Then I called him back. I told him I'd be glad to help in a formal consulting capacity. My external rate for construction operations consulting was $275 an hour billed in 2-hour minimums with a 3-session retainer required up front. I could have a contract drafted within the week if he wanted to move forward. He said he'd have to think about it. He never called back. Walter called 4 times over the following month. I let everyone go to voicemail. Each message was a version of the same thing, consulting opportunities, a different kind of arrangement, bringing my knowledge back into the company in some capacity. The 4th message had an edge to it. The first 3 didn't. He used the word loyalty twice. I sat with that word for a day. 19 years of 5 to 1:45 a.m. site visits. Vendor calls on Saturday mornings. Municipal compliance reviews that ran past 9 at night. Nearly 2 decades of treating their problems like my problems because at some point I'd stopped being able to tell the difference. If that wasn't loyalty, I don't know what the word means. And if it was, Walter had gotten 19 years of it without ever putting my name on a single thing that mattered. I called him back on a Sunday morning. He picked up on the second ring and started talking before I could say a word. The company, the restructuring, what a consulting arrangement might look like. How much had changed. I waited until he stopped. Then I said, Walter, you told me this company runs on family blood. You were right about that. So I went back to mine. I hung up. A few months later, Renee Albright from Midwest Construction and Infrastructure Review reached out. She'd heard about the Irongate contract win and wanted to talk about the estimating methodology behind our bid. We did a 40-minute phone interview. The article ran the following month. My name in the headline, a photo, a full breakdown of the system I'd built, and what it had done for Irongate's numbers over 2 quarters. First time in 19 years, my name appeared in print connected to work I'd actually done. Pete left a framed copy on my desk without saying anything about it. I found it Monday morning when I came in. I left it there. Around that same time, I heard through a mutual contact that Prute Construction had brought in an outside equity partner to stabilize their cash position after the contract loss. Walter stepped back from day-to-day operations not long after. Nolan stayed on in a reduced capacity. I don't know the full details, don't need them. That fall, at the Ohio Commercial Contractors Summit in Columbus, Iron Gate was recognized for the contract win and for the operational numbers we'd posted. Pete introduced me as the person behind the work. I shook some hands, talked shop with people who understood what I was talking about, answered questions from contractors who wanted to know how we'd sharpened our municipal bid process. Donna drove down from Dayton for the evening. She stood next to me during the reception, and she looked like someone who'd made a decision and had no second thoughts about it. On the drive home, she told me Miles had made the dean's list his second semester. He called the following week, said he'd seen the article online. Said the headline was pretty solid, Dad, for a trade publication. That's about as much as a 20-year-old engineering student is going to hand out. I'll take it. Here's what I want to leave you with. If you've spent years building something inside someone else's name, a partnership that stopped being equal, a company where your fingerprints are on everything, but your name is on nothing, you already know what I'm talking about. You felt it, that slow, quiet realization that the loyalty only runs one direction in certain rooms. So know what you actually own, not what you've contributed to. Not what you've been trusted with. What is legally, documentably, provably yours, your client relationships, your systems, your name in the right clause of the right contract. A co-founder isn't a hired hand. An idea built on your time and your equipment isn't company property until someone makes it so in writing. Document everything. Date everything. Understand the difference between what they need from you and what you actually hold. And when the day comes, don't leave angry. Don't make it loud. Just leave prepared. That's when the math changes in your favor.